Welcome to What's Important to You, a podcast about purpose, passion, and the things that truly matter. I'm James Dean, life coach and host, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests from all walks of life and ask one powerful question: what's important to you? Their stories will spark reflection, fuel your goals, and remind you what really matters, so you can move forward with clarity and momentum. In today's episode, I'm joined by a public speaking specialist who helps professionals and teams unlock their voice and speak with real confidence. Whether it's pitching an idea, contributing in a meeting, or delivering a presentation with impact, her work transforms speaking from a challenge into a powerful personal asset. After years as a secondary school teacher, she made the leap in 2019 to start her own business. And since then, she has worked with clients across Ireland and around the world, from the UK and Europe to the USA, Latin America and Asia. Her mission: to help people step up, speak clearly and show up with confidence in every space they enter. Today, we find out what's important to Maureen McCowen. Hi Maureen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, James. I'm really looking forward to this chat. It's different to usual podcasts that I've been guests on, so looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, we're just going to dive straight in, Maureen, with the first question, which is always, what's important to you?
Yeah, and it's a simple question, and I have thought so much about it, and it's a really good one, because I know the first answer that came to mind, I was like, okay, but why is that important? And when I started digging deeper into the why, I got to the real freedom is the word that came to me. And I know I'm not the first of your guests to say that, because I'm listening to other podcasts, but freedom was the word that really just connected for a number of levels. You know, one of the ones, if I'm linking it to my work, was that I was a secondary school teacher for many years. But since I've set up my own business, I'm 6 years in business now, and since I've done that, I now have freedom to take holidays when I want. Teachers have great holidays, but you're restricted to certain times of the year. I can schedule my diary to be, that I can take time off if I want. That's really important to me, that freedom, So, and then I suppose even thinking back to my childhood, I was brought up in a small village shop, but it was opened 364 days a year. And now, again, that idea of growing up, having a childhood where there wasn't the freedom to go on holidays or do anything, the shop always came first. So there were lots. That single question. I was out for a walk with the dog one evening, and most of the time was thinking about what was I going to say for that question, and I didn't expect it to go where it went, but I'm glad it did.
That's fabulous. Yeah, and then you're right, a few people have said that word before, but I love, as you say, when you go a level or so below, in a sense of why it comes up. The why is really, really interesting. And the two things, it's like that first thing, in a sense of the last thing you said there, that childhood of growing up with the village shop, and because I'm assuming as well at the time, is like, arguably, was it like the heart of the village? So it kind of had to be open for those days in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a half day. We were closed half day on a Sunday, but it was open from during the summer 8 a.m. and in the winter 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. during the summer months, and 8 p.m. during the winter, and then the half day on Sunday, and even on Christmas Day, because the house was attached to it. And even on Christmas Day, someone would come knocking on the door because they ran out of milk or they needed batteries for a toy that Santa had brought or whatever. So you were always tied to it. It was always there.
Wow, it's very different sort of experience there, and I can understand then how that relates to you now. And then the other piece that you said there, especially in relation to career, coming from a world of teaching. You said secondary school. You said, was it?
School,
yeah. So as much as you say that the cliche of the teachers and the holidays, but also, as you say, one is restricted in the sense of the holidays is the most obvious thing. But when it's also, I don't know, from an outside looking in, there's an element of restriction within. Is there an element of restriction within what you're able to do as a teacher as well, in the sense of what you're?
Hugely. And over the years, because I had a long career teaching, I was over 25 years teaching,
Wow.
and over the years that restriction came in, because as you had more regulation and more, I suppose, standardization across schools, which is good in one level, but it also removed an awful lot of that flexibility, because you're very, very tied to a curriculum. And then when teaching, you're tied to that curriculum. You've no control over, we'll say, what students you're going to face in the following end of August, beginning of September. So those students, like, I loved my job, don't get me wrong, but I absolutely loved it. But the most stressful time for me, I would not sleep well before going in to see what students I was going to have the following year. Because if you had a difficult class, that set up what your year was going to be like for the year ahead. So, that was a challenge. And then also the 40-minute classes. And so you're ruled by the bell. Every 40 minutes, the bell goes and one group go out and the next group come in. So again, that freedom during summer holidays, I used to just take off my watch and leave it aside until back to school, that during the holidays that I wasn't tied by that clock,
Yeah.
tied by the bell. So yeah, it's really one of the things that I love now.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind me asking what subject you taught for those 25 years?
So Irish and French. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And most
And
of my time was I'm living in Nace, so I was teaching the CBS in Nace. And boys and languages, they don't always go too well together. Irish can be a bit more challenging than some of the other subjects as well. So, yeah, it was interesting.
yeah, absolutely. And no, I mean and I think it's an interesting one as well, because I've spoken to a few people on here who have been in the teaching profession like yourself, and then moved
Mhm.
into the business themselves, or trying something very different. And again, what I find really interesting of the people that I'm remembering who've spoken to me is like, it's not that they didn't love their job of teaching. They did. That's what they went into from from university. That's what they studied. That they did. But they all kind of got to that point, and that roughly that 20 to 25 years, where I think as well, because of like everything, there's constant change in every industry, if you want to put it, every organization. But when they kind of stopped, it wasn't what it like when they were started, and it
Yeah.
had changed so much. And I think, and this is the question as well, it's the acceptance that you've changed as an individual as well. And
Yes.
is it so? Was it when you decided? What was the sort of reasons you decided to move on from teaching? Was it because you wanted to do the business, or because you kind of had
I
fallen
hadn't
on out of it?
I had not planned to
Okay,
start a business. That was not the plan.
all right.
Um, no, it was, I suppose I had come to a point in my life where I was just wondering, there were a few different questions that were going on. So one of the things, our youngest son was after starting university. So we had that freedom again,
Yep.
that end. And my parents and my in-laws had passed. So there was no responsibility on the other
Yeah.
end as well. And it was like, okay, I can do something for me now. Um, and part of me always wondered, could I do anything other than teaching? Because all I had ever
Mm.
wanted to do was teach. I was that kid who had the dolls and the teddies lined up on the bed, and I had the easel blackboard, and I was teaching them. And I couldn't imagine myself ever doing anything else. So there was that curiosity to see, can I do anything else? And I decided to apply for a career break. And it's a great bonus to have in teaching, that you can take that career break. So you had to apply in January for the following autumn. So I applied, and I had no idea what I was going to do. It was that I thought that it'll fall into place. Now, that's really unusual for me, because I like everything mapped out and planned and structured. So that idea of just, let's see what happens, it wasn't my personality at all. But that's what I did, and went to career coach. And that idea was, again, are you sure you want to leave teaching? This is where your strengths are all lying. And somebody said to me, what about doing corporate training? And I hadn't even heard of corporate training. I was like, what's that? And I decided, okay, that's something that I don't have to do huge upskilling in. So I did the Train the Trainer course,
Yep.
and I thought that I would be able to work with one of the training companies, deliver training on their behalf, but nobody was interested in having a conversation or a coffee with me. So then it was like, well, I wonder, can I do this myself? And that's what I did. So in February of 2019, so that was after applying for year 2 of the career break, then at that stage, that I set up the business in 2019. And you have to apply each year for your
Right.
career break, and you've got a maximum of 5 years. So after year 4, instead of applying for year 5, I handed in my notice at that stage because I knew I wasn't coming back. And it was like, okay, that's, this is it. So, yeah, like I said,
That's,
accidentally, definitely did not
yeah.
intend setting up a business.
I love that though, because I love the contradiction in the sense of from coming that, and it comes into again that first word in sense of freedom for me, with the contradiction in the sense of the world of teaching has to be organized and structured.
Mhm.
As you said, it's not just in a sense of from September to May. It's each day is the 40 minutes and the breaks, and here's the things you need to teach this year and this curriculum for these levels of students, etc., etc. And having that, and from what you said, you enjoyed that, you liked that structure.
Mhm.
To go from that to the we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
it's a great shift. So in that, and even when I say that, you smiled just because it like, so what did that first, I'm interested more in a sense of not having this sort of plan as such. What did that give you initially?
It was that sense of freedom, and it was this idea that actually, whatever way this works out, it will be okay. Now you have to remember that there was always the safety net there, that if
Yeah.
this doesn't work out at all, I can go back to the classroom. It's not like I hated it. Excuse me. So it was a really good position to be in, that yeah, I can go back. This doesn't have to work out. And when you know it doesn't have to work out, that is very liberating, because you can try things and you can experiment, and you're not attaching any result to it. And that, and just as I'm talking to you, it reminds me a little bit of, that awful time 5 years ago when COVID came and people had to do new things and try new things. But there was great experimentation taking place at that time as well, because we didn't really have a choice. And it was like, we have to give this. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. We'll try something else. And that was the phase that I was in back there as well when I was starting out the business. Didn't know anything about setting out a business, and then you find your way like everybody else, and you learn that it's an awful lot more involved than what you thought it was going to be. And I'm sure, like so many other people, if I'd known all that was involved, I probably would have taught myself out of it and thought I wouldn't be able for it. And
Yes.
ignorance can be bliss
Yeah,
sometimes.
absolutely. And I think that's a really, and the two things I love there, and you're right in a sense, you had that sort of, um, for want of a better word, safety net in the sense you could go back to teaching, you
Mm,
had it as a career break. But I love the point there that you went in there going, and you said to yourself, it doesn't have to work out, but or attaching some sort of results. Because I think this is again the great thing about arguably another contradiction in the sense of there's one thing about setting a goal or setting a plan or having an idea to work towards, but sometimes when the goal is a metric or a number, something that's when we're told it has to be this so we can measure it. But if that's all you're fixated on, versus where you were coming from seemed to be much more, as you say, the experiment, we'll try this, we'll try stuff. I think it's a much more less pressure maybe way of approaching something that you're
yeah.
coming in a brand new at as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remembering back when you were talking about metrics and first year in business, doing different business courses and so on, and it's always so much goal focused, and setting your goal for what you want to earn that year and what you want your sales to be. And I had set my goal. First year was very low money, fair enough, and the second year things had gone better, and the next year they had doubled. I was like, wow, this is great. And then the following year, I set this really ambitious goal and I didn't get it. And I was so gutted. Nobody else knew or cared. It was a self imposed goal that had no meaning outside of whether I hit it or not in my own head. And I was like, that's not for me. That's not the way that I want to operate, because, you know, who am I setting it for, or what am I setting? What am I setting that goal for? So again, it all ties back to that idea of not being tied down to things and being free from things. And it's not that I'm dismissing goals because they can work, but I really think you need to pick the goal that is right for you, or that KPI that is going to suit you, and that's what you work towards, and not one that you feel you should be doing because that's what everybody else seems to be doing, smashing their goals when it comes to November, So
Yeah, no, love it. No, absolutely. No, I think that's a really powerful point, and I think it's really important to point this out, echo in that in the sense of, because say that one thing didn't that one year didn't hit that particular number, but it's almost that sometimes when we focus on the one we don't hit, we can often forget all the things that we did. And
absolutely.
there could have been 99 things that were amazing, but because it's that one, that's where we kind of
Yeah.
put all of our energy and focus on. And a lot of what people think, oh, actually, well, I didn't hit, that's it, done, I'll cash out or whatever, and that I'll just give it up. So it's a really healthy thing to say, is like, it depends on which one you focus on, or which ones. And the other point you say is like, it was the way you put it was a self-imposed goal versus something to strive towards, almost that the sort of stick to beat yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big part of that was because at that time I was watching what other people were doing, and I felt this is what I should be doing too. I should be
Yeah,
following the same path. And when this realization comes about that actually, what do I want from my business? And that was I was around that time I was working with a coach, and he was asking me that question, what do you want? And the same as what's important to you. It was a really tough question. I struggled
yeah,
with it a lot. And it wasn't so much that I discovered what I wanted, but what I didn't want. And I think that's as important. I was like, no, I don't want to be setting these financial goals that are really, out of my reach and sort of stretch goals for me, because that's not what suits me and the way that I want to run my business. I have different things that are important to me. And that was a good realization.
love it. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to know, in a sense of then, when you kind of started it back into 2019,
Mm.
how much maybe has the business evolved or changed, or throughout those 4 or 5, 6 years?
Yeah, it has. In some ways, it has changed a lot, and in other ways, it hasn't changed much at all. I suppose when I started out, I have the same core idea of clients that I want to help. Maybe the percentages of them have changed a bit. In that, at the beginning, I was very much working one to one with clients, whereas now, there's a over 50% of my business now is coming from going into companies and delivering in-house training. But it takes a long time to build that
Mm,
up and to get known for delivering and for being in that space. So the fundamental is always going to be the same. The tagline that I have is unlock speaking confidence. And that is for people who are nervous, yes, but not everybody is nervous. I've got clients who are very confident speaking in front of a group, but they want to have the confidence to deliver their message
mm,
succinctly. They want to be able to deliver it within time. A lot of clients that I'm working with at the moment, it's for internal presentations. They're never client facing, but they want to upskill their team so that they're better at delivering the type of presentations that they do. So there's a mixture. And then you
mm.
have people who come to me on a personal level because they want to improve for their own work reasons. Sometimes business owners as well, if they've got different talks coming up that they want to work with. But the fundamental way that I work with clients is still the same, and it is that helping people to get their message across clearly and concisely.
Love it. And so, was that when you, going back to that, the start of it in sense of 2019, was that the sort of, when you initially said it was the corporate training, was that the initial basis of it always to do with presentation speaking for people?
Yeah, because when I was starting out, like I said, I decided to keep with training because I didn't have much upskilling to do.
Sure.
And then it was, okay, I'm qualified to train now. What do I train in? And I
Yeah.
had been a member of Toastmasters, which is a public speaking organization. I'd been a member of there for 11 years. And when I was there, I was a mentor to a number of new members that came in. And I could see the fear that they had of speaking from a work related event, that maybe it was holding them back in their career and so on. So I knew there was something there, and I decided I was going to do the general soft skills training because the business was called Soft Skills
Yeah.
Success. And like anybody puts, you put a lot of thought into what you're going to call the business. I had originally planned to do a broad range of soft skills training and coaching. And one of the first networking events that I went to, and I was looking for advice from people, and someone said to me, you really need to niche down. And I'm like, okay, I can't niche down. Well, first of all, I didn't even know what niche down meant at that stage. But once I figured it out, and it was like, okay, well, what I'm offering isn't niching down to a particular industry, but I can niche down the offering so that it is purely public speaking, presentation skills, a bit into communication skills, but that's within a narrow enough realm of what I'm doing there as well. So it is keeping it very focused within that area. And it means then that from, like what I was talking about, from the marketing point of view and so on, people know very clearly what I do, and you get associated with that rather than having lots of strings to my bow that I'm doing. It's very focused.
No, I love that. Absolutely. And I'm, because it's one of the things I was thinking there when you said you'd been a member of Toastmasters for 11 years, and then obviously being a teacher for that length of time as well, effectively public speaking to children and teenage adolescents for the number of years. Do you did both of those? One that I've assumed, obviously, the Toastmasters experience would have come handy. Did the teaching experience help you more than you thought, or did you know it was going to be the benefit that it was?
It it did, from the point of view of, well, first to backtrack for a bit, because
Yeah.
a lot of teachers are actually very nervous public speakers, because
Interesting.
it's very different speaking to a captive audience of students that are in the room rather than speaking to your peers even. So a lot of teachers will
Yes.
never speak up at a staff meeting because they're nervous speaking in front of their peers. So the expectation almost is that, oh yes, you're teaching, you're well used to public
Yes.
speaking, but there is a difference. But from my own point of view, and back to your question there, the yeah, Toastmasters gave me a great foundation in the public speaking side of things. And then when it comes to the putting courses together, how to put a program together, how to structure it, how to know how much to fit into whatever length of time it's going to be, whether that's a webinar, whether that's whatever, that that time management of things is very much part of what I've learned from my teaching days, if you like. And
Yeah.
again, back to COVID, when everybody was changing and adapting, and suddenly we had to do things differently in COVID. One of the things that you get excellent at in teaching is flexibility and adaptability, because you might have a class plan that you're going in to teach 25 students about whatever topic is going to be that day, and you walk into the classroom and 12 of them have gone to a match and they didn't tell you because they didn't want to get extra homework to do. And you have to adapt, because what do? Do you go ahead with the plan, because then you
Yeah.
might have to repeat it the next day? You can't give a free class because you have to get your curriculum covered. So you have to think on your feet, and you have to, so that word pivot that we were all hearing during COVID,
Yeah.
you're pivoting on a daily basis when you were in the classroom, because there were always things coming up that you had to adapt to. So that was something that I found helped me hugely then when it came to moving online and changing the way that you were
Yes.
doing things. And even for interactive, like, I did a course on how to deliver training effectively online, and there were a lot of the tools like Menti and some of the ones that people are familiar with now, Kahoot, and there were a range of online tools. I had accounts on all of those because I was using them with my students before,
Yes.
when I was teaching. So I was familiar with all of those type of tools anyway. So that type of thing, it gives you confidence. It's not directly helping your business skills, but you're saying, actually, I do know a bit more than I thought here, in
Yes.
whatever way it is. And confidence breeds confidence. And
Yeah.
you sort of say, okay, I can do this. And it's the same for different clients that you're meeting. Somebody might ask you to do something, you're thinking, I'm not sure I could do that. And then when you go through it, it's like, yeah, of course I can. It's
Yes.
we can stop ourselves doing things sometimes.
I was just going to say that because it's because what I find interesting when I talk to people or with a client or something is that how often we can forget or dismiss the skills that we've learned because they've become so normalized to ourselves.
Mm.
So
Mm.
in the fact that like people going to something along like you were going along to Toastmasters, or I've had people who've, you know, that you wouldn't know, that it's the things that you don't know about that person, that even if it's someone that you've known for a number of years, or if you're working with them and what they share or don't share. And I'm fascinated, even people, they say, oh, I'm a grade 8 on the piano or something. And it's like, how, and they're saying it's such a throwaway thing, but because if they've been doing it for so long, from the age, to them, it's so normal. But it's like, but you don't realize it's not just you've got to grade 8 on the piano, the dedication, the practice, the
Yeah.
interpretation, you say the adaptability, all these additional things that you're able to do from that one skill, if you know what I mean, that's been quoted. So I think it's, and then I think it's that phrase of, you know, the luckier I am is the more I practice, the luckier I am,
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget all these other skills that we've been creating over our lives can align to then when we're doing something slightly different. So all of
Mm.
those things that you built up have enabled you then to create this business for yourself in the way that you've
Yeah.
done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I started off in business, and when again, think, that nerves are there, imposter syndrome, whatever it's going to be. And I'm like, I've no experience of business. I've no experience of business, completely forgetting that I grew up in a shop.
Yes.
So of course I had experience of business. I was working there
Yes.
from the time I was able to look over the counter. I was dealing with customers from the age of 8 or 9. Of course I had experience of business, and
Yes.
my parents would have come from no experience of business, but they learnt it and I learnt it through them,
Yes.
So it is,
That's, yeah.
it's that accumulation, like you said, of all the skills that we have in life that one of the things when I was taking the career break, I was wondering, would I be qualified for anything else? Would my skills be transferable? And when you stop and you look and you say, oh my goodness, of course, and it's exactly like what you're saying for other people, that it could be somebody who has taken years out of work and they've been a stay-at-home parent, and they're going back to the workplace and they're like, but I've been out of the workplace. And you're like, but look at all these other skills that you've developed during that time. And it can be very easy to see it for somebody else. We don't always see it for
Yeah,
ourselves.
100%, absolutely. Um, I loved it when I chat to many people like yourself who've gone into the sort of from the either private sector, or like yourself was the sort of public sector, teaching or anything, into business. And
Mhm.
you said a little bit about the sort of initial sort of starting out and the goals and maybe the financial side of it. But I'd love to know, what would you say your lessons have been over the sort of just in being I know you said obviously from the shop, but your own business. What would you say those lessons, biggest lessons you've had over the last few years from being in business for yourself?
It really is. When I decided to start the business, I googled how to be successful in business because I research everything. So I googled
Yeah.
that, and networking came up, and I was like, okay, where do I network? And that is one of the big things, in whatever format you want to call it, whether it's just getting together with a group of people, but finding people who have experience, who are going to be able to give you guidance and help. And I joined 2 networks in the January, about 2 or 3 weeks before I even set up my business officially. And I'm still in those networks and other ones at this stage. And it is surrounding yourself with people. I tend not to use that word like-minded people, because I think it's good to
No.
have people who aren't necessarily like-minded, because that can, we open us up to different ideas and so on. But surrounding yourself with people who are going to be able to help you, support you, guide you, give you advice, um, pick you up if you're having a bad day, all of those things. And just as I'm saying that, I remember I was going through a particularly tough time at one stage, and I was at a networking event, and as I was coming out, the guy who was chairing the meeting just took me aside and said, "Are you okay? You don't seem yourself today." And just to have somebody to notice that, and I burst into tears when he said that, because I wasn't expecting it, and I also wasn't expecting my response. But to have somebody who's noticing, it's not always about passing on referrals and growing your business. We're human beings at the end of it, and it is about that human connection. So that is definitely one of the things that's there. Another is the local enterprise offices and all of the support that's there from a practical and training point of view. There's a huge amount of support for people starting out in business that I had no idea about beforehand. And is availing of that and learning as much as you can. It's a huge learning curve.
Yeah,
So they would
100%.
be big things, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that. Is no massively. I think the both have availed of both, but definitely I think the group scenario wherever, whatever word you want to use it, networking, getting involved in groups, having those people around you, the supports, because as you say, even just it's for um the bouncing off. It's not necessarily thinking, oh, I'm going to get all the cliche or get the tips and the hacks and things like that. It's
Mm.
not about that. It's sometimes it's just being in the group, observing, listening. And you
Yeah,
say then someone asking you the question. I think it's a really powerful thing there. Just to echo on that again, it's like that person that spoke to you. It wasn't like, as you say, coming into how can I help you? What can we again? Can we get the numbers up? Can we do this? It was just the essential question of how are you?
yeah,
That human connection. That's
yeah,
the piece. Yeah, that's definitely the bit that uh, take from that. It's literally having that human connection with other people. Because then, to me, then that's sort of doing that mixing and networking and having that human connection with other people in business can only then have a positive effect when then you're going into the room with the people that you're essentially working with, your clients, because it builds your rapport with people in general. So when you're going to then deliver, you're at another level again.
yeah, exactly. And and let's be honest about it. It is a business, and you go to networking events, and there will be referrals and so on, but they don't come until you've got that connection. It's back to that cliche of the know, like, and trust, and that's what it's about. You're
Yes.
not going to pass somebody else's name on for business until you know them and you feel, yeah, they're going to represent me well. But I
Yeah.
know when I first started out and started going to all these networking events, and I felt that the scales wasn't tipped, it wasn't balanced properly, because I felt I was getting so much help and advice from people, and they were referring people on to me, and I felt I wasn't able to bring anything to the party. And I remember the first time that I was able to make a referral for somebody and help them out, I was so delighted to be able to give back, and just into that general pool of people. And that is what it's about. People do like to help. And yeah, even still, I always like when you're doing that little matchmaking thing, and two people who should connect, or someone that you're passing business on to. It's nice. It's good as well. And those things come back around to help as well.
100%. I'd like to know more and dive a little bit more about the sort of what you do now, in particular, in the sense of, you say you do a lot of, you said it was about 50-50 where you do sort of more group stuff and into companies
Yeah.
and things like that. I'm always interested in the almost like the before and after picture of
Mm.
the person or the group that you're working with, especially when it's something like public speaking, because it is such a common sort of worry or fear for people. So I'd love to know. And the first question is like the when you experience it from being the person who's teaching them or training them, when you see them at the beginning of the course of the day and you see them at the end, what's that contrast like?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of a group that I was working with yesterday, and they deliver in the team that they deliver a 5-minute presentation just at the beginning, and then we go
Yep.
through our day's session, and then I give them time, and they repeat it at the end. And the most noticeable one from yesterday's, there were 8 of them in the group. I've given them a 5-minute time limit, and I cut them off after about 5 minutes 40 or so, because otherwise it's
Yep.
not adding any extra value. So of them yesterday, 7 out of the 8, I had to interrupt them at 5 minutes 40, and one of them, I'd say she would have gone on for 20 minutes. She had so much content prepared, but each of them had reduced it down to about 3.5 to 4 minutes in the second run, much more concise, much more focused, and they hadn't lost any of the value of the message that they were trying to deliver. In fact, because they were saying less, it meant that there was much more focus on the message that they wanted to deliver. So that was huge, and it's something that's really tangible. They can see that difference themselves. And I suppose when you're going in and it's a one day, you're going in, you do the training and it's gone. There's a 6-week program that I run twice a year, and that's open to anybody who wants to sign up on my website. The information is there on that. And that's an hour and a half a week. And that's a slower process. And it's more, I suppose, like what you would have if you're working with a coaching client over a longer period of time. And because you have that period of time, you can actually see the progress, and it's a more sustainable progress as well that people have at that. And I really enjoy working on those because we're taking it at a slow pace. The individuals have 3 opportunities to deliver, 3-minute presentation and then 5 minutes, and in front of the group on Zoom. But it can still be enough to make it a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You don't want people terrified, but it's just to, have the adrenaline going that little bit. And you can see the progress that people can make in that. And that can be really huge. And people come from a variety of backgrounds there, but very often it is because they want to be more confident speaking up in the workplace. That, tends to be it tends to be the overriding theme that's there. And very often I will notice if clients are working with me one-to-one, the more senior they are in an organization, the more there's almost a stigma about needing help with public speaking. So the more senior people, they will contact me from their private email address, not their work email. Very often those emails will come in, or they'll book a call with me, and the email will arrive in maybe at 11 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday night. Or there was one that came in at 4 o'clock in the morning there recently. And it's, this is literally keeping someone from their sleep, and they've decided I have to do something about this. But they're not going through the company because they've got to the position that they've got to without it being known, and they don't want to get caught out, and they don't want to see it as a weakness. One individual, he was in middle management, but he knew he wasn't going to get any further without improving his public speaking. And he said, I can't hide from it any longer. I can't avoid it anymore. And that's the type of language that was being used.
Yeah.
When he was giving presentations to more junior members in the staff on his team, for him to avoid it, but he was pretending that he was, giving them the opportunity to showcase, but it was because he didn't want to do them himself. So it can be very vulnerable for people to make that step to sign up to work with me. And I'm sure you find the same. There can be it can be a big challenge for somebody to actually take that step. And I'm reminded of somebody who signed up for my 6-week program a couple of years ago. She had been following me on social media for a few years, never interacted with anything until she signed up for this. And the word she used was, I'm taking the leap. And that was to join a group program. So you get that idea of people of like, I need to do something about this. I really need to do something about this, but I'm nervous to do something about it.
Yeah.
So
it's so much in that and so powerful. And what I love about what you just shared there is one thing that I find common and really try to highlight to people all the time is this affects everyone. This idea that I'm the only one that thinks like this is the thing that's keeping you from making that, as you say, that leap or taking that opportunity. And it's like, so I love the fact as well, you say the way you put it in for people in the corporate world or a company business, like the higher they've got, it's almost like the more of a stigma it is. And it's even for them to become even more vulnerable, it's taking a huge amount, as you say, and the sort of almost cloak and dagger way that they're trying to approach it. That person is like, it's very equalizing for the person who you mentioned it earlier. And if anyone's listening, this isn't to be flippant in any way, but like we have assumptions of the senior manager and the assumption of the return to work parent. But arguably they could be having the exact same worries and thoughts and concerns and doubts. So, but we're putting ourselves into these sort of boxes. The return to work parent is thinking, well, the senior manager's up here, and the senior managers are, well, I'm up here, I've got to be, you know what I mean? It's they're each got their own story. That's the thing, and it's very similar to each other. So I think it's really powerful in the sense of that. That they can both come to somewhere. That's the point,
Yeah, absolutely. And when they come, they're opening their hearts, essentially,
Yes.
and they are telling you this whole idea of, this is a big challenge for me, this is a big problem for me, and it's holding me back. And you've got usually, we'll say, people who are at the earlier stages of their career. They're very practical, typically.
Yeah.
This is holding me back in my career, so I need to do something about it, and I'm doing this as part of my CPD. And then they might get company support to pay for them doing the course and working with me or whatever. And so they're taking a very practical approach. Whereas other people, then it's like, I can't do this, and it's causing problems, and all of the stress that's there with it. And I have to do something about it because I can't keep going this way any longer.
Mm.
So while the problem is the same, their attitude towards it is different. And it's, I suppose part of that is surprising for me. It's like, okay, I had expected one category of person, but I hadn't expected the other, and it's
Yes.
all part of the learning as we're going through as well. But it really does touch across
Yeah.
all sorts of categories, and people from entry level right the way to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I'd be interested. And it depends on how much, I suppose, feedback you get from the various different people you work with, the clients. But I'm almost, because they're coming obviously to you for, you say that specific sort of reason, in sense of, would be public speaking and from workplace meeting, whatever it is. But I'd be interested whether you get any feedback about how, after working with you, how it has any further positive or knock-on impacts. So one is to deliver the meeting or deliver the presentation. Does anyone share about how it affects anything else in their lives or work?
No, it's not. And I suppose because when I'm working with people, it's for a relatively short period of time.
Sure.
Even for one-to-one clients, it wouldn't be over an extended period. It would be interesting to go back and to see.
Mm,
Now, having said that, anecdotally, that I might meet somebody and they might say to me, actually, what you did there, that really helped, and it's really helped me, my confidence or whatever. I got a lovely email there the other day from somebody who they had attended, it was a pitch training course for businesses, and it was in person in the January of 2020. So it went
mm.
that far back. I haven't seen this person
Wow.
since, but just emailed me, and as part of the email said, I don't know if you realized how much you helped our business confidence with that course. And it was just so lovely to think that
Yeah.
you're still having an impact 5 years on. That was
Well,
good.
yeah, and I think that's the point, though, in a sense of like, sometimes you don't even know, and it isn't that you don't necessarily get the direct feedback, but it's really interesting in a sense of that even the phrase of using their business confidence, for
Mm,
so many years on, that um again, that sort of cliche of sliding doors moments, but the fact of like going to something that like a course, or working with someone like yourself, that how the longevity, and then they're bringing something back to that, almost that being a significant moment
yeah.
in their business, is massively powerful. So no, I think it's um I can't see how not working with yourself to improve someone's public speaking cannot have just a positive impact on their confidence. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I think it's a really powerful thing to, in any situation, to be able to have that power to. And you said it yourself. There's, I think, like, trying to remember the phrases of getting their message across, isn't it?
Mm,
It's,
mm.
and the way, in a sense, of which they want to say it. It's that whole thing again. This is what made me think, is like, people like it when they're heard.
Yes. And a number of people that I would work with who would struggle maybe to get their voices heard at meetings in the workplace. And it is that whole thing about, I had an idea and I wanted to say it and I didn't, and then someone else said it and I was kicking myself, and we can be really, really cruel and hard to ourselves. So if we kick ourselves, we're going to kick ourselves harder than we kick anybody else.
Yes.
But there is that whole thing and that frustration that can build up then, and then that can
Yeah.
impact on confidence, and it can just have that huge knock-on effect. And it's not that I've a magic wand, and
Nope.
it's not that I give the confidence, but I give tools for people so that they can start to work on making those improvements. And very often it can be really small tips and small changes that can make a big difference to the way that they interact and engage.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it can be, yeah, it can be powerful to see it in action, you know. And again, even from yesterday, one of the questions that came up when somebody was saying, you know, if you're leading a meeting and it's in the board of directors and suddenly a cross conversation starts between two of the directors and you're delivering your presentation, but they're eating into your presentation time, and how do you manage that situation? And it comes back to that idea of feeling that lack of control, that powerlessness again, that they're the directors, can I interrupt them? And finding how to manage those type of scenarios, that's confidence as well. And that's the type of situations, I suppose, that people are facing on a daily basis that, you know, when we're working together, we see. And as always, it has to fit. I can say to somebody, you should say X, Y, Z, but they have to find their own words and their own language around it, and it has to feel comfortable for them. Because if they're delivering my words and they don't believe it, then they're worse off because they're not going to sound confident in that. So it's
Yes.
really finding what works for the individual.
Yeah, so I think that no, that's a really important point to echo in a sense of, and very much in a sense of what you do in a sense of really a coaching perspective
Hmm.
of what you're trying to do. It's not giving people a specific sort of format or formulaic way of this is how you talk, enabling them to build up their own skill set to deliver it in the way that, as you say, best suits them in
Yeah.
any situation.
Yeah. And it just reminds me of a client that was working with me at one stage, and he was, you know, he was very hard on himself for not being confident and so on. And I said to him, you know, what would confidence look like? And he was looking at the likes of Tony Robbins.
Yep.
So he was going to the top of the top. If you're going to
Yeah.
somebody who was
Just
completely extrovert, and if that's what he was looking at as being what he was aiming to achieve, it was a complete personality shift that he'd need. It was never going to
yeah.
work. And it didn't need to work. This was the thing. He didn't have to be like a Tony Robbins character to be good at public speaking. And
Yeah.
it's finding what suits you and having your own voice. And there is a phrase that you don't need to change your voice. It's amplifying your voice. And that's
Yes.
very much what it's about. It's about finding your style and working on that rather than trying to be somebody else.
100%. Yeah. Well, so yeah, if we were all Tony wanted to be Tony Robbins, we wouldn't be.
Daunting, wasn't it?
No, I
Yeah.
love that. Well, I always like to ask this question to all of my guests because I find that I am one of those people that I think quotes or phrases can be quite powerful if they're used in an applicable way. Are there any quotes or phrases that are important to you?
There was, and again, I was thinking about this because I've lots, but there's one that I really like, and it still fits back into that theme of freedom, and it's the Dr. Seuss one. You know, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind, and it
Yeah.
is that idea of being free from other people's judgment or opinion or what they might think, because I would have grown up in an Ireland where it was very much the, you know, what will they think? What will the neighbours think? Or what will
Yeah.
this person think? And that, you know, that really restricts people. So again, that quote really resonated with me. It's one that I try to go by a lot, you know, that it's thinking about people are going to have their opinions of you. You can't let that hold you back. And it's the same when I'm working with clients, it fits into there as well. You know,
Yes.
people going to judge you. Well, they might judge you. I finished reading or listening there to Mel Robbins'
Oh, yes.
Theory
Interesting.
recently, and that's pretty much fitting into that Dr. Seuss quote as well, you know. But what I liked about from Mel Robbins was I posted on about this on LinkedIn because I'd held off on reading because I thought, let them, yeah, I know what that's about. But it was actually the let me part of it, which was really, really powerful. And, you know, bringing it to the work that I do with my clients, if somebody is afraid of what others will think about them, well, let them, but let me prepare the best that I can and go in and deliver my best because I can't control anybody else. So it all fits back into that Dr. Seuss quote as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
No, I've seen a lot about it. I haven't either got the book or listened to it yet from Mel. It
yeah.
does look a really interesting
Yeah.
perspective and theory and that. Like, and it's, initially it's all the let you, but the let me piece coming in behind it is very, very powerful. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's where the real gold is in it. And
Mm,
if you like your audiobooks, she reads it herself, and the narration is excellent because it's like she's having a chat with you. So it's
brilliant.
great. Yeah, very,
Love
very
it. Love
easy
it.
listen.
Very good.
Yeah.
I also like to ask people, who do you think have been the biggest influences in your life, Maureen?
Yeah, keeping it local for this one, it would have been my parents.
Yeah.
I mentioned there that they had the shop, so we had the shop growing up. But my parents were both from Mayo. They were both born in the west of Ireland. They met and married in London, but shortly before but shortly after they started going out together, my dad was working on a building site and he had a bad accident and he ended up in a wheelchair, so he was
Gosh.
paralyzed. And so, being brave and taking a leap of faith, they decided they had three daughters and they decided to come back to Ireland. But they moved to somewhere where they had no family. They were starting a business in a small village where they didn't know anybody. And, I suppose it's one of those things you don't appreciate it when you're younger, but looking back now,
Mm,
you're going, wow, there was a lot, that took a lot of guts to do what they did.
yeah.
and and how they did it and how they built up a very successful business from nothing and from not having any idea as to what they were going to be at. And there were no local enterprise courses or anything there
Yeah.
to guide them along the way. So it really was, finding their way and doing that. So yeah, I think that would have been big influence. I always would have had um, back to that theme of freedom again, that they will always have given us the freedom to do what we wanted with our lives. We were never given any, you should do
Mm,
this course or what about that. It was like, go for what you think you can do. And we were given that freedom and that opportunity to do things, which was really important as well. And again, something I didn't value at the time until talking to others whose parents might have tried to steer them into certain courses or steer them down certain routes, that they ended up not happy in. So
mm.
yeah, that would be where I go there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, from thanks for sharing that the bit of that story there, because it to me, like it like a sort of real sort of bravery in the decision making that they did, considering the timing and when it was the years ago and things like that.
Yeah,
That sort of to take those big decisions. Um, yeah, and as you say, it's because you only reflect it, when you're children, you don't know, in a sense of,
yeah,
certainly when you're reflecting, when you're making big decisions, what I mean, when you realize Jesus,
yeah,
and so it literally made me think there, like, because I've shared this a few times, I have to share the thought now, um, because I was born in Germany, so my parents, so I grew up on a military base in Germany.
yeah, yeah.
So my mum and dad, my dad was his profession, he was a social worker. He got offered the job. He applied for the job for this posting or this position in this base in Germany, and he didn't get it. And initially, he wasn't the first person. The person they offered the job to passed on it, whatever. He was the next person. He got offered the job, and he's like, I had to think about this. And they said, you got 24 hours. And they
Mm,
were living up in Yorkshire at the time, I think, my parents. And my mum was pregnant with me at the time. So they had to then make a decision. And literally then they'd already had three children at the time. And my mum was expecting me. So my mum had never left England.
yeah,
What I mean. So when I sometimes think back, and they literally then got on the ferry, went to a completely different country and a different system with the military and all this sort of stuff. Like just as soon as you said that about your parent doing that
mm,
move, I was thinking about, yeah, that was actually a big decision, but you only think about those through reflection. You don't
yes,
know it at the time because that's just your life at the time.
exactly. And you don't know any different. Whereas as you get older, and then if you have thinking about, well, you've got four children or three children and then another one on the way, and no family, no social network over there, that you're starting from scratch. Like it is really difficult. Like my parents would have had three of us under five when they moved home, and so that's, yeah, it's big.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can then, and then I think it's the sense of then they've essentially instilled that whole thing of freedom in for yourself, for freedom of choice or freedom of going for what it is that is going to sort of give you what you want out of your life. I think it's such a
Yeah,
powerful thing to have, a lovely gift to have, I think, to when you have that in your life.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
100%. Well, Maureen, it's been absolutely wonderful to chat to you.
I
I've
loved
really
it. Yeah.
enjoyed it. Yeah, I've got one more question before I do let you go, and that is, what's important for your future?
Yeah, you're not going to be surprised what I'm going to say. It has been the running theme, and freedom to travel is going to be a big one on this one because
Love
we have
it.
two sons and they're both in Australia. So Australia, we're going to Australia at Christmas. We're going over there for 5 weeks, which again, if I was teaching, I would not be able to do that. So, um, but yeah, if they end up having their lives over there, well then we'll be back and forth. There'll be regular trips, hopefully, to Australia, and that's
Yeah,
going to be a big part of it. But yeah, that's ultimately family is what it's down to, and if family are over the far side of the world, well then you do your best to keep those connections as strong as you can, as long as you can, and that's
yeah,
the way to do it. If it's hopping on a plane for 24 hours, you do it.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's yeah, fabulous. And then you say it's how things, and I think it's a really sort of powerful thing to think to leave people on, because taking the sometimes the arguably safer, securer option can still be fine,
Mhm.
but you don't know what may come. And sometimes it's like, as you say, taking those decisions and making the choice to transition away from the teaching. It has now enabled you, considering now that your sons are on the other side of the world. It's like, I'm not restricted by that anymore because I was decided to make those and take those actions. So again, it's that thing of, you're not going to know everything. There's no point trying to figure it out. But then sometimes you kind of go, but it's worked out the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think when you kind of start to try and live in that way, again, it's that thing of people when they say to me, it was like, oh, and then this just happened. Oh, and then it's like, because they're living in a way that you mentioned it with some other parents. It's, instead of being guided, thinking, oh no, I'm pushing you into a certain way of being or living, or because a lot of times I think when people do that, they're living through their own fears or worries or concerns and stuff, versus having that freedom to be or express. So I think it's wonderful in a sense of that it enables you to do that now. I think it's a fabulous thing that you've been able to set up your life, that you think, yeah, I'm just going to go. Like, it's
Yeah,
fabulous.
absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it just all falls into place, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you allow it, and back when I took that career break, and in the few months, we say around this time of the year in 2017, it would have been at that stage, or 2018. I'm in the staff room, and colleagues are asking me, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I'm not really sure, but it's going to work out." And I'm like, "Who am I even saying this? Because this is not the way
Yeah.
I've ever been about anything in my life."
Yeah.
But it has worked out. It's not everything goes the way that you want it to, but when you look back on it, you say, "Yeah, actually, everything is just leading to where I wanted to be now." So it's good.
Absolutely. 100%. I love it. Once again, Maureen, thank you so much for chatting to me. I want to make sure that people know where they can follow and connect with you online. We'll make sure all the links are in the notes, but if you would like to give a shout out where people can do that.
Yeah, so if it's on social media, LinkedIn is my platform of choice. So it's Maureen McCowen on LinkedIn, and then Instagram is Maureen_soft skill success. And my website is softskillsuccess.ie.
100%. So all those links will be in the notes. So please, you can check out Maureen on those links and follow her online there. Once again, Maureen, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Thanks a million, James. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.